All right, I've got a fun one for you today. We're going to dive into a pretty weird creative puzzle, one that connects two absolute giants from completely different worlds, the cool, cynical jazz rock of Steely Dan and the timeless drama of William Shakespeare. It sounds like the setup for a bad joke, right? I mean, on the surface, what could they possibly have in common? One gave us these perfectly polished studio albums full of session legends and these really cryptic lyrics about losers and con artists. And the other, well, he basically gave us the foundation of modern English literature. But we had a hunch there might be some kind of deeper connection there. So here's what we did. We ran a little experiment. We took the entire classic Steely Dan discography and fed it to a bunch of different AIs. ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, the whole crew. And we gave them all the same kind of strange prompt. Match each one of these albums to a Shakespeare play. Now, the goal here wasn't to find some single correct answer. We just wanted to see what kind of creative patterns these machines would dig up. And this is the musical journey we're working with, that classic 7-album run from Steely Dan. You can really hear the progression, right? It goes from the bright, almost poppy sound of Can't Buy a Thrill all the way to the sleek, decadent burnout of Gaucho. Each album really has its own unique vibe, its own mood, and that became the canvas for our little AI experiment. So the results started pouring in, and honestly, at first, they were all over the place. Totally fascinating, but chaotic. The AIs were arguing over whether an album was a tragedy or a comedy. But then something really interesting happened. A clear signal started to emerge from all that noise. On one specific pairing, nearly every single AI landed on the exact same conclusion, and they all got there on their own. And that point of consensus was their 1977 masterpiece, Aja. I mean, just look at this. The answer came back almost unanimous. The Tempest. It's honestly kind of shocking to see so many different systems all agree on something so creative. When you see that happen, you've got to ask yourself, okay, what's going on here? Why? Well, the connection really comes down to this shared feeling of ultimate control, of pure artistic perfection. Think about it. The Tempest is widely seen as Shakespeare's final solo masterpiece, right? It's where the magician Prospero just masterfully controls his entire world. And in the exact same way, Aja is Steely Dan at their absolute peak. The production is flawless. The musicianship is just transcendent. Both of these are works by artists who've achieved a kind of sorcery in their craft, creating these perfect self-contained worlds. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. So if Aja was the point where everyone held hands and agreed, the 1974 album Logic was where the fight broke out. This album sparked a huge debate among the AIs, and it revealed two totally different ways of listening to the music. Yeah, the interpretations basically split right down the middle into two camps. One group saw Logic as Hamlet. They latched onto the album's moody, existential dread, that twisty introspection. But the other group, they focused completely on its style, the clever wordplay, the tight structures, and they paired it with a witty comedy like Much Ado About Nothing. So, which is it, a tragedy or a comedy? The machines just could not agree. So beyond the consensus in the debates, we got what I like to call the creative outliers. These were the real curveballs, the pairings that, at first glance, make absolutely zero sense. The ones that seem like a total glitch in the system, until you read the reasoning. And these often turned out to be the most insightful of all. Just take Steely Dan's debut, Can't Buy a Thrill. Most of the AIs did the reasonable thing and paired its bright, sunny sound with one of Shakespeare's light comedies. Makes total sense. But one AI came back with a stunning outlier. Macbeth. Yep, the dark, bloody Scottish play about ambition and murder. How in the world could that possibly work? Well, the AI's logic was that the album's easygoing vibe is actually a trick. It argued that underneath all those catchy hooks, there's a deep cynicism. It pointed to the opening track, Do It Again, and said it's all about being trapped in these destructive patterns you just can't escape, a theme that perfectly mirrors Macbeth's own downward spiral into cyclical violence. It found this thematic darkness hiding in plain sight. Pretty brilliant, right? So after sifting through all these different machine interpretations, what did we actually learn? What's the real takeaway from this whole strange exercise? Because it's definitely not about finding the one right answer. It's about something much, much bigger. It really boils down to this. The pairings that felt the most right, the most resonant, weren't about the literal story. No one was arguing that the guy in Kid Charlemagne is Macbeth. No. Instead, the real connections were all about a shared atmosphere, a feeling of dread, a sense of late-style mastery, a mood of witty cynicism. It's about thematic echoes, not narrative parallels. And that's why this actually matters. This whole experiment is really a new lens. It's a way to appreciate how the big human themes, ambition, betrayal, love, disillusionment, how they just echo across centuries, from a wooden stage in London to a recording studio in Los Angeles. It really shows us that sometimes just asking a weird question can force you to see the art you love in a completely new light. The value isn't in the answer, it's in asking the question. So, I'll leave you with this final thought. Forget Steely Dan and Shakespeare for a minute. If you could pick any two artists from entirely different worlds, a painter and a filmmaker, a composer and a novelist, who would you pair up? And what kind of hidden connection would you be looking for?